Begin the Gemara today on Daf Chof Aleph Amud Aleph, first line on the top of the Yamid. Ela Omar Rava. So we're in the middle of Inyan here. The Gemara before brought an Iboye regarding an Isha that owned a tablet, and the husband was using that tablet. She gave it to him to write the get on it, and then the husband gives it to her. V'nasam b'yada. The question though is, can we rely on the fact that this woman understands that when she gives it to her husband, she's not just lending it to him, but she's actually giving it to him as a full matana, that it should be his in order for him to be able to give it to her? Okay, so the Gemara tried to bring an ayah for this, but the Gemara refuted that, and here the Gemara will try to bring another ayah for this question. Chaf Aleph, the next page, Chaf Aleph. So the Gemara says, Elo Marov Mehacha. Let's bring a ayah from here, the following Mishnah that says in Baba Basra. This is all the way at the end of Baba Basra. Orev hayoytze la'acha chitum shtaris. You have a star that was already signed, and the malva is holding the star in his possession. The lender has the star. Now after that, there's a guarantor that wants to add to this star that he's obligating himself that if the borrower will not pay, so he's going to pay instead. So the halacha is, if he then adds his arevus, he's going to guarantee to pay. So goive menochasim b'nei chayrin. You could collect from the nechasim b'nei chayrin, from the properties that are in the possession of the loive, but you can't collect from the nechasim mishubadim. Any of the properties that the loive or the orev that is would sell off, that can't be. You can't collect from there. The rule always is that a milva, b'shtar, a loan or any obligation which is in a shtar, you could collect not only from the properties that are in this person's possession, but even from properties that were sold off. Because there's a koil, the buyers should know about this. So they should be careful before they buy to know if it was already obligated to be paid for someone else. But over here, this Orev, he signed on this shtar after the Eidim left already. He came afterwards and put his signature. So now he obliged himself to be a Orev, to pay. But since there's no Eidim here, they left already, so therefore his Arevus will only be for the properties that are in his possession. Okay, that's the halacha there. Now, what's the raya though to our case? So the Gemara before brought, who is the one that has to write a shtar? The halacha always regarding writing a shtar by money matters is, we learn from the pasuk Sefer Mikneh, that the one that's selling has to write the shtar. And therefore, over here, by the case of the loan, and over here specifically by the case of an Orev, the Orev is the one that's sort of selling. He's obliging himself to pay, to guarantee to pay for this loan. The Orev is the one that has to write the shtar. Just like a seller that's obliging himself to give a property, he has to write the shtar. By the Orev, he's obliging himself to pay, he has to write the shtar. But what we're talking about over here, a shtar that's already in the possession of the malva. After it was signed already and it was given to the malva, so how could the Orev sign the shtar if he doesn't have that shtar in his possession? It's not his shtar. So you must say, what happened over here? The malva gave the shtar to the Orev and told the Orev, here, I'm giving you the shtar as a gift, and now that the shtar is yours, you can sign the shtar and write in that you're adding your arevus, and then the Orev gave the shtar back to the malva. So we see over here that when the malva gives the shtar to the Orev, we can rely on that he gave it to him fully as a matana, and then the Orev gives the shtar back to the malva. So we could say the same thing by an Isha. When an Isha gives her document, or her piece of paper or tablet that she owns, and she gives it to the husband writes a get and then gives it back to her, we can rely on the fact that she gave it as a matana. So the Gemara says again, the Gemara here says the same svara as it said before. You can't compare this case to the question of an Isha. Why not? Omar Ravashi says, Ravashi, my kushya. What's the question? How could you b'chlal prove from this case? Dilme gavre shani. Maybe a man is different. The yadelak noye, a man is more involved in these matters of money matters, and he knows that the halachas, that if he's writing a shtar, it has to be his shtar, and so therefore he knows that it has to be his, and then he has to give it back. So the malva knows that he has to give the shtar as a matana to this Orev. But over here, our question was regarding a Isha. Does a woman know this or not? So hello, Ravashi. So therefore Ravashi says, Mehocha. I'll bring you a raya from the following Mishnah. It says, Isha kaiseves as gita. A woman can write her get, va'ish kaiseves shayvrei, and a man could write the receipt. Meaning, like the get, the whole nusach of the get, the woman could write it, but then when the husband takes that get, he signs it, right? Because just the writing of the nusach of the get itself, that doesn't matter. The woman could write that. And the same thing regarding a receipt. The receipt over here is the receipt that, let's say that she received her ksubah, right? So she's the one that has to write the receipt. But it says, no, the man could write the receipt, Why? She'ein kiyum haget ela b'chaismav. The main thing is the signatures. Right? So since the signatures over here is going to be written by the husband or by the woman, whoever has to write, whoever has to have the signatures in their possession, that's the main thing. So what do you see over here clearly in this? Is this a Braisa or a Mishnah? This is a Mishnah. It's a Beferish Mishnah later on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. So over here you see clearly that we're talking about a get that's in the possession of the Isha. She's writing the get, and then afterwards she gives it to the husband, and the husband signs it, and the husband gives it to her. So it's pretty clear over here that it's not a problem for a woman to write her get, and then the husband takes it and signs it and gives it back to her. Okay, this is such a clear Mishnah that it's hard to understand. No, yeah, he gets people to sign. He doesn't sign it himself. Why is the Gemara even asking a question and it's bringing other sources? You have mamash here, a clear Mishnah. Omar Rav Zok Rav Kosav lo get v'nosnoi biyad avdoi. A person writes a get and he gives the get to his slave, to his Eved Kanani. And then, while his Eved is holding on to this get that he wrote for his wife, the Kosav lo shtar maton olav. Then he writes a shtar matana, a shtar that he's giving this Eved that's holding the get in his hands as a gift to his wife. And so what happens now? Kon ashu umiskareshes boy. So she acquires the Eved with the get in his hands, and therefore she gets both at the same time, and she becomes divorced. How is this? So this Eved that's holding this get, now that the Eved became owned by the Isha, so it's like the husband put the get into her chotzer. If a husband puts the get, you don't have to put it directly in her hands, even though it says in the Torah, v'nasan biyada. Biyada includes not only her hands, also a chotzer. So now this Eved that was owned by the husband, but he's giving her a shtar matana that the Eved is hers, so at the same moment that the Eved becomes hers, the get is now found in her chotzer. So therefore it goes together at the same time and she becomes divorced. The Gemara asks about this. How could the Eved be considered to be a proper chotzer, her property that he's holding the get for her? V'amai, how does this work? Chotzer mehalechasi. An Eved is a chotzer that walks around. It's a movable chotzer. V'chotzer malechas leikana. And the rule is regarding chotzer that a chotzer that walks around, there's not anything that's contained in it, is not a kinyan. So this is the source of this is in the Gemara and Bava Metzia. There's various different reasons Rishonim say for this, but the chotzer is learned out from a yad, which has to be stationary, just like the yad of a hand that can't move around on its own; it only moves with the body. So that's what some Rishonim over there say. But the point is that the source of chotzer in the Torah is dafke regarding a chotzer that's stationary in one place but not moving around. So Hakari should be kind of the get with an Eved that walks around. Now, so if you'll say, okay, that's if the Eved is walking around, but over here the case is that the Eved is standing in one place. But it doesn't help. Rava said, anything that could move around, and when it moves around, you're not kaina, even the fact that it stands, even when he stands on one place or sits on one place, you're also not kaina. The very fact that it could walk around is not the chotzer that the Torah said works. A chotzer is only something that is always stationary. So the Gemara concludes this and says that this halacha that Rava said still could be true. And the Hilcha said the halacha is bekafos. If this Eved is tied up and he can't move around now because he's tied up, then I say that he's like a chotzer, which is stationary in one place. And if he was holding the get in his hands and the husband gave the Isha this Eved as a matana, she'll be mugareshes right away. Some Rishonim actually add to this not only kafos, but he also has to be asleep. So he's like, he can't even untie himself. So then he's mamish like a chotzer, which is stationary in one place.
That's one for that second anyways.
True, but that's enough. That's if he's, and then that matziv, he's considered to be like a chotzer, which can't move. Omar Rava said another halacha. Kosav lo get. He gave her a get. So here coming back to the sort of the source of this halacha. He gives her a get. V'nosnoi b'chatzeroi. And the husband places it into his own courtyard. The kosav lo shtar matana olav, and he writes her shtar matana that he's giving her this chotzer that he placed the get in it. So as we said before, by Evet kon ashu umiskareshes boy. So she now acquires the chotzer together with the get in it, both together, and she's divorced. So says the Gemara, it's the same halacha that Rava said before regarding the Evet. Why is he saying both? Tzricher, he had to tell me both of these halachas. If you would say only the halacha of an eved, Hava Mina, I would say dafke eved. Maybe only by a eved we say this halacha that she gets the eved and the get at the same time and she's divorced. Aval chotzer, but by a chotzer it's different. Ligze mishum chatzeira haba la'achar mikan. By a chotzer, there's room to say that there's a gzeira for a chotzer that comes to her afterwards. What does it mean, a chotzer that comes to her afterwards? So Rashi says that the husband may make a mistake and think, oh, if I could put a get into my chotzer and then give her the chotzer afterwards, even though when I placed the get into the chotzer it wasn't hers yet, so maybe I could also put the get into a chotzer that doesn't belong to me at all. I could put it into stam, any other chotzer, and if I acquire that chotzer afterwards and give it to her, maybe it would also be good. Right? So, and over there, for sure, she's not going to be mugereshes.
Why?
Only by his chotzer that he places it in. So then I say that when the husband placed it into the chotzer and he gives her the chotzer as a gift, so then she becomes mugereshes at the same time. She's zeich in the get and in the chotzer. But if it's another person's chotzer, then he's not going to be kaina. Second. Because the get is not coming from the Baal. It's not coming mikoyach habal. That's what Rashi over here says. When you place the get into your own chotzer, and then it's your chotzer that is going to her, so then it's coming from your koyach. But if it comes from a different person, second.
What's the advantage of doing
One second. What the Gemara is talking about is that person that you placed the get into that person's chotzer, the husband didn't acquire that chotzer and then give it to her. That chotzer will go directly to the isha. If that person sold his chotzer directly to the isha, so then the get is not coming to the isha from the Baal. When the husband places the get into his chotzer, so then he decides to sell the chotzer to the isha together with the get in it. So she's getting the get mikoyach habal from his chotzer that he sold to the isha. But if the husband is placing the get into somebody else's chotzer, and then after he placed it there, that person sells his chotzer to the isha. So then the get is not coming to the isha from him. So a person may confuse the two. The moment he sees you could put a get into a chotzer that's not hers yet, he might think that he could put it in someone else's chotzer and tell that person, okay, now you sell your chotzer to the isha, and that would not work. So that's why he had to tell me the halacha regarding a chotzer. On the other hand, v'yashminon chotzer, if it would only tell me the halacha that if the husband places the get into a chotzer, that the isha is mugereshes when the husband gives her his chotzer, havamine dafke chotzer. I would think maybe that's only by the chotzer. Aval eved, but when it comes to an eved, so we explained before that the halacha of an eved is only if he's tied and he can't move. So I would think ligs the kafos, atishene kafos. Since this halacha only applies by an eved that's tied, maybe there should be a gzeira that a person might think that he could do the same even with an eved that's not tied. Kamash malan. Therefore, Rava said that we don't make none of these gzeiras, not the gzeira by a chotzer, not a gzeira by an eved. And if he gives it to the eved or into a chotzer and then sells them to the isha or gives it as a gift to the isha, she'll be mugereshes. Amar Abaye, but now Abaye argued on what Rava said. Abaye says, Mechti. Let's see. He says, if you really this can't work here. Why not? Because chotzer meheche is rabbi. What is the source b'chlal for the fact that you can be kaina a get with a chotzer? Mi yada. When the Torah says yada, so yada means not only physically a hand, but yada means something that is her domain, her property, just similar to a hand. If so, we have to compare that a chotzer will only be kaineh like a hand. And there are certain limitations that we see by a hand, and those same limitations should apply to a chotzer. What's the limitation of a hand? Ma yada, just like when it comes to a hand, the isa bein midaita or bein bal karcha. By a hand, so you're kaineh with a hand, whether she decides to accept it with her hand, or whether it's against her will. Av chatzeira, so too a chatzer, the isa bein midaita bein bal karcha. So by a chatzer as well, the chatzer should be able to be kaineh only in such a kind of a way if it's her chatzer and it's her decision. She could decide if she wants to be kaineh with her chatzer or if she does not want to be kaineh with her chatzer. But on the other hand, though, but the problem over here is v'ho matane. But when it comes to a matane, the midaita isa balkarcha lesa. when it comes to a matana, so it's only midaita. She could only be kind of this matana if she decides she wants to be kind of this matana here. But balkarcha, it's impossible for her to be kind of this balkarcha. By usual chatzar, if a person has a chatzar, it's possible to be kind of something in your chatzar with your will, with your consent, or without your consent. A person can place something into your chatzar when you agree, or he can place something into your chatzar when you don't agree. Similar to a hand, a person could receive something in his hand and can be kind in his hand with your das or without your das. But over here, what's the case we're talking about over here? Over here, we're talking about a matana. This is not even her chatzar yet. She's getting the chatzar right now. He's saying, I'm giving you this eved as a matana. I'm giving you this chatzar as a matana. She doesn't have to accept this. It could only become hers. The chatzar that was her husband's until this moment will only become hers midaita, if she agrees. And if so, it's not similar to a hand. Maybe a chatzar is only kaina in a case where it's already her chatzar. Once it's already her chatzar, then it's daimit to a hand, which you can be kaina midaita or balkarcha. But if it's a chatzar that's not hers yet, he's giving it to her right now, and it only becomes hers midaita. Maybe that's not enough connected to her, like a hand, which is midaita or balkarcha, and therefore you won't be kaina.
Even if she wants to accept it.
It doesn't matter. But if she doesn't want, she will not be kind. So that shows that it's different than a yad. It's the fact that she has to be dafka midaita in order to be kind shows that it's not so closely connected to her. Something that is bein midaita, bein balkarcha. It's my hand. It's me. If it's already my chatzar, I own it already. It's my chatzar. Over here, though, the fact that she's getting the get through the chatzar of the husband that he's giving her right now, it's only midaita. It's not so closely connected to her. It's not so automatic. So this was the question of Abaya on Rava's opinion. So he's arguing on Rava. He says that therefore you can't be kaina get together with the husband giving you this chatzar as a gift. Mask if Rav Shimi Barashi. So Rav Shimi Barashi asks on what Abaya just asked on Rava and says, but we find in another case that the get does work in such a way. When a woman appoints a shliach to receive her get for her, the midaita isa and balkarcha lesa. Now this shliach lekabbalah that she appoints is only if she agrees to this. She's appointing the shliach that this shliach should now receive the get for her. You can't have a shliach lekabbalah receive the get for her against her will. So it's only with her das and not against her will. Shliach lekabbalah, and nevertheless the shliach is able to be like her hand, sort of. He's able to be her shliach to receive the get for her, even though in the case of the shliach he could only do it midaita and not balkarcha. So you're telling me that by a chatzar, the chatzar could only receive the get because it's an automatic thing. It's whether midaita or balkarcha. That's why the chatzar works. But by a chatzar, which it could only work midaita because she's receiving the chatzar now as a gift, it can't work. But I see that by a shliach is also only midaita, and still the shliach could receive the get for her. Okay, so that's the raya from shlichus. So Abaye says, why are you bringing me a raya from this case of shlichus? Abaye, or kasha, right, on against Abaye from this case of shlichus. Abaye will respond to this. What's the connection here? Otu shlichus miyodas rabbi. This halacha of shlichus, that the shlich receives the get for her, and that's only midaita. Is that learned out from the same place that we learn out chatzah from the word yoda? It's learned out from the word in the Torah when the husband gives the get. The Torah says v'shilcha mi beisai, so it could have said v'shilach, and instead it says v'shilcha. So we read it as v'shilcha mi beisai. Read it, v'shilcha is written with a mapik hey, which means he sends her away. But we can read it without a mapik hey, and then v'shilcha means she sends, that she could send the shliach to pick up her get. So we learn that from v'shilcha, which is a completely different source. So the halacha of chatzar and the halacha of shlichus have nothing to do with each other. Since chatzar is learned out from yad, so it has the limitation of a yad. It has to be daimit to a yad. That has to work whether midaita or balkarcha. Shlichus, which is learned out from a different pasuk, over there there's taka a different chiddush, that the shliach is able to receive the get, even though the shliach is a separate, independent entity, and he has to be appointed by the isha midaita. But there's no connection between the halacha of chatzar and the halacha of shlichus. So it's taka appella. Rav Shimi Barashi asked this shaila over here. Taisus over here asks this question. How did Rav Shimi bar Ashi even ask this question, B'chlal? So Taisus says, Rav Shimi bar Ashi held, even though Chotzer and Shlichus are two different things, but nevertheless, you do find by Shlichus this concept that another entity that's not mamish bal karcha connected to you can receive a get. So he held that that's megala b'negei to the halacha of chotzer as well, even though chotzer is learned out from yad, but nevertheless it doesn't have to be 100% daimah to yad. You could still learn out from shlichus that even regarding chotzer, you can be kaineh with a chotzer that only works midaitai, similar to shlichus. And Abai is saying, no, you can't prove from shlichus to chotzer. It's two different dinim that have nothing to do with each other. Another answer that the Gemara says, Abai will tell you why Rav Shimi bar Ashi's question on him is not a question. Or he could answer, Shlichus lekabala nami ashkacham bal karcha. The truth is that even by shlichus, when she sends a shliach to receive a get for her, so shlichus lekabala works both midaita and also bal karcha. There is a case where a shliach for a isha is receiving the get for her, and he receives the get for her even without her consent. When is that? Shekein av mekabel get lebitei ketana bal karcha. If a ketana got married, a father could marry off his daughter a ketana, and then when if she's getting divorced, the father sends a shliach to receive the get for his daughter, even against her will. So we see that the shliach lekabala works both midaita and bal karcha. So therefore, you can't prove to me regarding a chotzer that the husband is giving the isha right now that it would work only midaita. Only if she accepts this gift that this kind of a chatzah would work. Because even by shlichus, I see that the Torah says the chiddush of shlichus only in a case where it's medaita and balkarcha. But to say that chatzah works in such a kind of chatzah where you must have her das, I don't have a source for that in the Torah. It's not similar to yad. Okay, going back now to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, al ha'olah shel zayis, that you can write a get on a leaf from an olive tree. And then the Mishnah said, v'chulu. And the main thing the Gemara is going to focus on is the next cases of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says you write a get on the hand of an eved, but you have to give the whole eved to the isha. Or you write a get on the horn of a cow, but then you're going to have to give the whole cow to the isha. Says the Gemara, bishla miyad eved. It's understood when you write a get on the hand of the eved, why you have to give the whole eved to the isha. Because lo yavshil miktzeh. Obviously, you can't cut off the hand of the isha. And Rashi here says, why not? Because the Eved is chayv and mitzvahs, and an Eved, if you cut off his hand, then he goes out free. Right? That's one of the halachas of how an Eved goes out free. So you're not allowed to make a chabala. So you can't cut off the hand. So you're going to have to give the whole Eved to the Isha. But Eloket and Shalpada, when the Mishnah says you can write a get on the horn of a cow, so why do you have to give the whole pada to the Isha? Liktzei v'leisvela, cut off the horn and give it to her. That's the Gemara. No, on Makra, the Torah says, the kosav v'nosam la, you write the get and you give it to her. What do you learn from this? Misha ein mochusa leksiva o nesina. The get has to be written on a material that all you have to now do is give to her. Yatzazeh shemochusa ksiva ktsitze unesina. But if you write it on a material that then has to be cut and then given to her, so then the get's going to be possible. So this is the source of the halacha that you write a get on a mechuber, that it's going to be possible because you have to have that step of ktsitze in between. It has to be directly ksiva and asina. It's a big discussion over here in Taisvis whether this psul applies also regarding, let's say, a parchment. If you write a get on a very big parchment and it's you don't want to give her the entire parchment, so you cut off that piece of the parchment that you wrote the get on from the rest of the parchment, and then you give it to her. So you also sort of writing it and then cutting and then giving. But so Taisus brings a machlokes in the beginning of Taisus. He says that no, it's not the same like when you have a balchai which is alive and then you're cutting it off from it, or you have an eved and you're cutting off, or something that's connected to the ground and you cut off from it. On that, it's bechusik tzitze. But if it's just a parchment and the parchment was just very large and you cut off one piece, that's not called mechusik tzitze. Because it's a parchment. It's just the fact that it. But there is in Rishonim, Rabbeinu Tam, others that will machmer and said that even by a large parchment, and then you're cutting it off afterwards, it's still a problem of mechusik tzitze. Rabbi Yosef Glili Yaimeh v'chulu. In the Mishnah it said that Rabbi Yosef Glili says you can't write a get on anything that is food, edible, or on any live being. What's the source of Rabbi Yosef? My time, the Rabbi Yosef Glili. So the Tanya we learned in the Braisa, Sefer. Torah says because of la Sefer, ainly ela Sefer. So that would mean that you have to write it on a Sefer, on a parchment. Minayin l'rab is called dava. How do I know I can write it on any other material? Talmud leima because of law. When it writes because of law, that means mikol mokim, that you can write it on everything and anything else. And Rashi says it doesn't say in the Torah v'kosav v'nosan sefer krisis biyada. It says v'kosav law sefer krisis. So from that we understand that the kosav law is saying that you can write it on anything. Imkei matamad loymar sefer. So on one hand the Torah is writing v'kosav law on anything, but on the other hand the Torah does write sefer, which means something specific. What is it coming to exclude? That ma sefer, so here Rabbi Yosef Glili says, just like a sefer, dov she'ein bo ruach chayim, like a parchment that doesn't have any life to it, ve'eino eichel, and it's not edible. Af kol dov she'ein bo ruach chayim ve'eino eichel. You write a get only on something that has no life in it or is not edible. So that's the source of Rabbi Yosef Glili. As to Gemara v'Rabbanon, so what did Rabbanon say to this? Why don't they learn out this exclusion from the word sefer? So they say, Iksiv bas sefer, if the Torah would have written bas sefer, that it should be written in a sefer, then I would say, like Rabbi Yosef clearly said, that it excludes an animal or edibles. But hashta d'chsiv sefer, when the Torah writes v'kosav law sefer krisis, what does that mean? That means l'sfiras dvarim udasa. Kosav law sefer krisis is saying you have to write the sfiras dvarim, you have to write the story or sort of the details of what you write in a get, that you're divorcing your wife. That's all the Torah is saying. You can't learn out regarding what material is written on, because it doesn't say bas sefer, but it just tells you that you have to write to her that you're divorcing her. Hashte. So now asks the Gemara, if so, hashte d'chsiv sefer l'sfiras dvarim hu da'asa. So if the word sefer does not come to exclude anything, the word sefer is just saying that you have to write the story of what you are writing here to divorce her. Sorry, this is part I just read this. Okay, I'm sorry. This goes back to before now. So v'Rabbanon. So now based on this, the Gemara asks, according to the Rabbanon, hi v'kosav mai of delay. So then, why do you need the word v'kosav to be marbe anything more? If, according to the Rabbanon, the word sefer is not here to exclude anything, because sefer just means sfiras dvarim, so the word v'kosav doesn't have to be marbe anything. So what are they marbe from the word v'kosav? And so the Gemara, according to the Rabbanon, the word v'kosav is coming to teach me something else. B'ksive miskareshes, a woman will only be divorced by writing her a get, but ve'ena miskareshes b'kesef. She will not be divorced by giving her money. Maybe you would think you can give her money and she would be divorced with this. Why? Why would I think so? I would think to say, I should compare when a woman leaves her husband to when she comes in, when she marries her husband, because in the pasuk it says it together. Just like marriage. One of the ways is with money. The divorce could also be with money. Kamash Malon, that's why the Torah says, that only with writing a get could she be divorced. According to Rabbi Yosef Glili, they used v'kosav for something else. So how does he know this halacha? Nafkelei, he learns it out from this that the Torah says misefer krisus, which means sefer karsa, only a get that you write that will cut her off from her husband. Ve'im davacha karsa, but nothing else. Giving her money is not a way to divorce a wife. Now, according to the Rabbanon, what do they learn out from this expression sefer krisus? The Rabbana learn out from here, davar hakairis beinoi lebeino. When a husband divorces his wife, he has to give her the get without any strings attached. He can't add a condition in the get in such a way that will keep his wife connected to him. She has to be totally severed from him. Gittin, as we learned in the Braisa. A person writes to his wife, or he tells her, here, I'm giving you the get, but with a condition. Almanas shalei tishti yayin. With the condition that you'll never drink wine. With the condition that you'll never go to your father's house. So this is not a krisis, because forever she's connected to him. She can never drink wine, she can never go to her father's house. She's not totally severed from him. But if you told her with this same condition, but differently, he gave a time frame, you can't drink wine for 30 days. So then krisis, then she will be divorced. So, and according to Rashi in another place says that she's divorced immediately. Even though the condition of 30 days wasn't fulfilled yet, but she's divorced immediately. And some Rishonim say that she could even go and get married to someone else immediately. Okay, so that's what we learn out from here, from the word sefer krisos, to say that it has to be completely severed. Okay, but Taisus over here says, when you make the condition that you're not going to go to your father's house, why is that considered to be a condition that keeps her connected to her husband forever? What happens if the father passes away? So then there's no condition anymore. So she's not necessarily connected to her husband forever. Taisa says, base avicha doesn't mean only when the father's alive. even after he passes away, it's still considered to be the father's house. Okay, ve'edoch. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, from where does he know this halacha that you can't give a get if it's not fully severing her from her husband? Mikaides krisus. The Torah could have said sefer kaides, that you give her a sefer that severs her, and it says krisus, which is a sort of a extra, like a plural term or extra letters over here. From that we learn out both halachas. The halacha that we said before, and this new halacha over here that you have to sever her from her husband. And the Eidach, according to the Rabbanon, Kares Krisis Le Darshi. He doesn't darshan this Kares Krisis, and therefore he only learns out one halacha, which is that you can be Megadish your wife with a star, Sefer Krisis, and not with money. But this second, you can't learn out the two different halachas from this. Okay, according to the Rabbanon. Again, according to the Rabbanon, what's the halacha that you learn out according to the Rabbanon? This halacha, yeah, that only the shtar and not, or was that according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Remember, again, the Gemara. According to the Rabbanon, you can only learn out one drasha, not two drashas. Okay, Zok Teilige Mishnah Ein Kaisvim B'Mechubel Lekarka. You can't write a get on something which is attached to the ground. If it's attached to the ground, as we just learned before, so then it's v'kosav and v'nosam, but there's a step in between, so it's possible. But kasvai b'mechuber, if the get was written and it's still attached to the ground, then tolshoy, he detached it, v'chasmai, and then he signed the get, v'nosneilan, he gave it, they're kosher. It will be kosher. Okay, so the Gemara will explain. We just said you can't write it when it's attached to the ground, and then it says if you write it and you detach it, it will be kosher. The Gemara will explain. Rabbi Yehuda Paisel, Rabbi Yehuda says a get will be possible, ad shetehei ksivasai v'chasimasai betolish. The get has to be both written and signed when it's detached from the ground. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, another halacha, ein kaisvin loyal niyar hamachuk. You can't write a get on a document, on a paper that was written on it once and it was erased. V'loyal adiftere, and also not on diftere, which is parchment. The Gemara will explain what this diftere exactly is. And the point here is, mipnei shu yochel is dayev. These are materials that it's easy to forge it. Once it was erased in it once, you could erase again and it won't be noticed. And because it could be forged, you can't write on it. The Chachamim machshirin. The Chachamim, however, say that it is kosher. It's okay to write on such a document. And the Gemara will explain why the Chachamim say it's kosher. They follow Rabbi Elazar's opinion, as we'll see in the Gemara. So now, how do we understand the pshat in the first case of the Mishnah here? The Gemara, the Mishnah says if you write a get, even when it's attached to the ground, so it'll be kosher. But the Mishnah begins and says, that you can't write the get when it's attached to the ground. So Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, the pshat in the Mishnah over here is, there's two parts to a get. There's a taifis and a tairif. We had this before already. The taifis is the standard nusach that you always write in every get. The tairif is the shem, va'ish, va'isha, and va'azman, the specific names of the man, woman, and the time. So the whole halacha of writing a get with all the halachas that apply to a get, and over here we're talking about the get that cannot be written attached to the ground, that applies to the tairif, to the main point that it's of this get, right? So the tairif of the get. As long as the place where you write the name of the ish and the isha, and then it's not connected to the ground, that's okay. As long as that part of the tairif is not attached, it's written when it's not attached to the ground. Now the Gemara explains, what does that mean? If that's the pshat in the Mishnah, then then our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Elazar, the Omar Eidei Mesire Karti. Rabbi Elazar's opinion is, who are the witnesses that kasher a get? Not the witnesses that sign a get. You don't even need witnesses to sign a get. The main witnesses that kasher a get are the witnesses that are there when you give the get to the Isha. And therefore, according to Rabbi Elazar, when the Torah writes v'kosav law, what does v'kosav law refer to? The writing of the get. It's not referring to the signatures of the get. There are no signatures of the get. So when the Torah writes v'kosav v'nasan, that the get must be written l'shma, and over here the halacha that we're speaking about, that the get can't be written mechuber, it's not referring to the signature, but it means that the actual writing of the get cannot be mechuber. So how do we understand the pshat of our Mishnah? So this is what our Mishnah is saying. You should not even write that standard nusach of the get, which does not have to be written with the proper halachas of a get, but you should not write the taifis of the get when it's still attached to the ground, because Shema Yichtav Taif. Because if you do that, you may end up filling in the name of the Ish and the Isha also when it's still attached to the ground. So there's Gzeidim B'Derabbanan. Then the Mishnah says, Kasvai l'taifis v'talshai. But if you wrote the taifis when it was still attached to the ground, and then you detached it, and then kasvai l'taitiv v'nosnei la kasher, and then you wrote the taif, the name of the ish and the isha, when it was detached from the ground, so it's kasher. That's the main thing. It shouldn't be mechuber when you're writing the taif of the get. And this is Rabbi Lazar's opinion, that if a kasav goes on the actual writing of the taif of the get, even though in the Mishnah said the lashon of v'chasmai, talshay v'chasmai v'nosnei la kasher, but according to this pshat, chasmai does not mean the signatures. According to Rabbi Lazar, there are no signatures. V'chasmai means the conclusion of the get, which is when you write the taif, when you write the shema, ish, and the isha. This is all one pshat in the Mishnah. But Reish Lakish says, no, chasmai shaninu. In the Mishnah it says, chasmai, meaning that he finished writing the entire get, the taifis and the taif. He wrote it all when it was mechuber. And then he detached it, and now he has the signatures signed in it. Rab Meir, so our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rab Meir. Rab Meir says, what is the main thing that makes the get a kosher get? The signatures on the get. So as long as the signatures were done when it was detached, it's fine. Otherwise, you can write the entire get when it's attached to the ground. When the Torah writes v'kosav, it means v'chasam, it means the signatures. So if so, the pshat in the Mishnah is as follows. Ein kaisvin tairif. You should not write the get, and that includes even the taif of the get. Do not write it when it's attached to the ground, but that's only a gzeidim midrabanan. Gzeidim shemi yachtim, because then the edim may come and sign it even when it's still attached to the ground. Kasvei l'taif, if you wrote the whole get, including the taif, when it's still attached to the ground, and then tolshoy and the chasmai v'nosnei la, and then you detached it and then you had it signed, then it'll be kosher. As long as it's signed when it's detached from the ground, according to Rab Meir, the main thing is the signatures of the get, and the get will be kosher.